I'm Eric from Longbox Review.
I'm Peter from the Daily Rios, and this is episode 9 of Eric and Peter's Legion Project Podcast. Welcome to the 9th episode of the Legion Project Podcast. My name is Peter.
This is Eric.
How you doing, Eric?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Peter?
Good. We try to be so official in that opening, and
yeah, I know.
And, just
sometimes it feels weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I'm always like, wait, how am I supposed to do that?
Yeah. You know, after 9 episodes, we would know what we're doing.
It's not like we don't have our own podcast
that
we yammer into a mic to, you know.
Yeah. But I will say, though, since you asked how I'm doing, we talked about this just a second ago off mic, so to speak. I feel like, Peter, that Fire Lad has belched his fire here locally because the sky's filled with smoke from fires that are in my area.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Do you see the commitment that Eric has, listeners? He's literally sitting in the middle. No, you're not.
No. I'm not. Yeah, I'm in no danger. I'm not. No, not nearly anywhere close to the fires. But man, you can certainly see the effects in the air.
Ugh.
In fact, it kept me up last night. I was so congested from the smoke that I think anyway that I could not get a good sleep last night, and I'm dragging a little bit. So I apologize ahead of time for how that comes across here.
Does that make your clothes smell as well?
It can, yeah. Last year it was really bad. We had over a week of really heavy smoke in the air. And I'd be at work, and you know the building filters were pretty good there, but then I'd go home, and man, you could just smell smoke everywhere.
That's like Interstellar, where they have the dust everywhere. I don't know if you saw Interstellar.
Oh yeah,
yeah, like everything's covered in dust, and just you got to carry rags for your mouth and all that. Ugh, oof. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on nature-wise, and well, it's all our fault. It's all humans' fault.
Yep.
Everything. We're in the dystopia. You realize that? We are in the dystopia.
I know, and it's so disheartening because we're here to talk about the Legion of Superheroes, which is a utopia to some degree, right? And it breaks my heart every time I read a Legion issue and I look around my life. I'm going, oh my God.
Thank God we're not doing the 5 years later just right now. It's just
it would be depressing, wouldn't it?
So depressing. Ugh.
But so good.
So good, yeah, obviously. Well, that was a hell of a preamble. If you're still listening, hi. And we could pull back the curtain a little bit here. As we are recording this, we haven't released episode 8. So if you send feedback based on 8 and then you listen to 9 and wonder why we haven't responded to it, it's just because, we don't have it yet. But we do have an email that we're going to talk about at the end of this episode that we got from a special guest. And we'll save it for the end because it's kind of long, and we both want to respond to it. And instead of taking up time at the beginning, we'll get to the issue at hand, issue number 9 for episode 9, and then we'll jump into some feedback at the end of the episode.
Sounds good.
And as always, special thanks goes to RhoMusic for our theme song, Lost City, where you can find links to Twitter and YouTube on our respective show notes. Okay, we have no news, so let's go right to the issue, yeah?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, issue number 9, Legion of Superheroes. Hit us up with the, do you have the credits and the synopsis for this one?
I do. So,
awesome.
Yes, issue 9, Reunion. Paul Levitz is the writer, of course. Steve Lytle and Larry Malstead are our artists. Say that 5 times fast. John Costanza continues as letterer, Carl Gafford as colorist, Karen Berger editor. And the cover is by Lytle and Malstead. Synopsis. On Earth, the Legion has convened a meeting with Wildfire, reminding everyone that it's almost time for the Legion election. Cosmic Boy wants to wait, however, adding the Legion should recruit more members. No sooner does Cos do that when the lost Legionnaires surprise everyone, hello everybody, by walking through the door they exited in, I presume, DC Comics Presents number 80 that we discussed last episode. Much smiling and hugging ensue. Elsewhere, Officer Jvan Aaron is looking for Chief Zendak's lost nephew in some forested area of Metropolis, when Element Lad, who seems to want more hugs, appears much to Jvan's delight. Eventually, they remember to help the nephew. Later, the Legionnaires gather casually in a wonderful landscape splash page, which I can't wait to talk about, Peter, where Timberwolf creepily eyes Lightning Lass and Shrinking Violet is irked that Yura is there. She confronts Yura, who doesn't seem to be intimidated by Vi, and Vi issues an ultimatum: "Don't do me ever." She leaves in a huff, literally, and bumps into a preoccupied Timberwolf, who later meets up with a green-skinned alien who, I don't know how you took this, Peter, who looks to me a bit like Ebenezer Scrooge. Elsewhere, Jan and Jvan are getting cozy at her apartment, but she is blocked by Chief Zendak, letting her know he's calling on the Legion to go to Hong Kong. Jan is also called by Dream Girl about this mission, and he chooses 3 of the lost team to accompany him. And I thought, well, that's kind of a dick move on his part. They just got back. Interludes. Number 1, R.J. Brand meets with a Protean. We had that last issue, I think, right? There was something about Proteans, I remember. Interlude 2, the science police appear to be lacking in detective training, at least as far as Officer Devron is concerned, because Bouncing Boy offers him some tips as he quote-unquote, investigating who shot Laurel Kent in last issue. In Hong Kong, we get this issue's worth of superhero action when the team goes up against Scalarian pirates. Interlude 3, Timberwolf's companion, who's now named Zerf, whom I assume is a lawyer of some sort. We discover that Karate Kid, remember him, everybody? Left Bryn as his executor. Whoops.
That's
slip of the tongue. Interesting. I never thought executor. Okay. And several billion credits in Bryn's responsibility. Let's see. Still in Hong Kong, the Legionnaires defeat the Scalarian pirates and find proof of their thievery. The issue ends with Jan waking Jvan with a kiss and tossing his Legion flight ring aside. Sexy.
Nicely done.
I'm having a lot of fun doing these synopses, so.
You want to just jump onto the cover right away?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have the cover to Baxter issue number 9 by Steve Lytle and Larry Malstead. And then we have the cover for the Tales issue just by Steve Lytle. And that's Tales of the Legion of Superheroes issue number 334. And what do you have thoughts on?
Well, let's see. Well, I have a bunch of thoughts about the Baxter issue one, but immediately I just want to say how much I actually enjoy the Tales cover more because it has a better sense of at least one part of the story in this issue.
Right.
And Reunion the way it is. In fact, I was going to look this up and I forgot. the way that the logo, or not the logo, the word reunion on the Tales cover, is that, I don't know, that's reminiscent to me of old DC romance comics. I don't know if that's exactly what they were going for, but that's the vibe I'm getting.
I totally got that vibe when you counter the two covers. Oh, yeah. And I felt, the Tales cover is the romance cover. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember seeing, I think it was at the end of one of the issues in the early 300s, or it was a DC Digest, Blue Ribbon Digest book, or it might have been one of those DC samplers, where they went through a Legion thing and they said, look, we have adventure. And then it would say adventure in the adventure logo. We have mystery, and the word mystery was like House of Mystery. We have space adventure, we have romance, and they were all, just as you are saying here, they were all in the same fonts, in the same design as the cover title of one of DC's older books. Mm-hmm. So that, I wouldn't put it past if maybe that's what they're trying to evoke on that Tales cover. Mm-hmm.
But we do get on the Baxter issue, we do get Element Lad and Javon in silhouette on the cover. They're looks like they're about ready to kiss, and there's all this stuff in all the characters around in between them. In fact, I mentioned how Chief Zendak was interfering with the romantic interlude in the synopsis, and here he is on the cover in between them. Which I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, nice catch, yeah. I'm in the same boat. I like both. I like the team group shot. Well, it's not really a group shot. It's more like little vignettes of the team.
Yeah.
And some of them are happy. Nobody's in strife, which is very much what the issue is kind of like. It's the Legion, quote unquote, at their best, but quote unquote, not really. But, and we haven't seen a team group cover in a while. And then the Tales one is like you said, absolutely more about one of the stories, but in all the images on the monitor screens, it's all the other stories too. And, again, Steve Lytle gets to do both. And he gets to go, okay, I did it this way in 1984. I'm going to do it this way in 1985 or 86 or whatever. And as an artist, I have to imagine that's just fun. It's fun that he gets to really mix it up. So I do like the Tales one a lot. I really do. And you could even see the Legion flight ring on the shelf there, but beside some wine glasses. They're good. They're good. I'm happy with these covers.
Mm-hmm. I did. Well, with all the characters on the Baxter issue, I was just trying to find some sort of connection with what's going on in the story. And, because there's such disparate reactions or, expressions in here, that it's just, some of them I can see. Others I have no idea what they're going for here. So it was a weird mishmash of things going on. And then the only other thing I'll mention about the cover is all the characters that are on this cover are in this issue, except we're missing one.
My favorite.
Yeah, exactly. Where's Phantom Girl in this? I mean, even Computo is on the cover, and no Phantom Girl.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant the other way, because Gigi's on the cover, but she's on the cover, but I don't think she's in the issue.
Oh, I think she's in that lounge scene. Just we see the back of her. We'll have to take a look at that. But
okay. Oh, I see. So I see your point now.
Yeah, it was an oddity considering how many characters they have in this cover. They couldn't fit Phantom Girl on there either.
Well, Eric, she is on the cover. You just can't see.
I was hoping you'd say that actually.
Well, that's not one of her powers, though, right? She's not invisible,
right?
When she gets intangible, is she invisible?
Well, not invisible, but depending on who drew her in past issues, she can be really translucent, or she just, you see her like as if she's solid, but just phasing through things.
Okay.
Which, so I was actually looking for something like that. Like maybe he was just kind of playing around with it, and maybe she is here, and it's some sort of weird secret that Steve Lytle is not showing us or not telling us. But anyway,
she's in block.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was looking for. Is there some sort of sign where she's somehow inside someone? Which maybe we should move on from this.
Okay, that sounds good. It is nice to see that, though, on the Baxter cover, that they did put supporting cast. There's 6 supporting cast members. I mean, Chief Zendik, as you said, Yira as Colossal Boy's wife, Gigi, Siobhan, Computo, as you said, little Ron Vidar all the way down. Yeah, so it is good that they don't get cover spotlight often. So that's good.
Yeah.
Good covers. Overall thoughts of the issue. Now, do you want me to go first, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I wasn't sure because, before we started, we both sort of admitted, this is going to be an interesting one. Overall thoughts. I think of all the Legion Baxter issues so far, this one feels the most interlude-y of all of them. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying I felt that way about some of the other ones, but this one really feels like that and really is like that. We get a couple things in it that I think warrant what they were trying to do, but my reaction to it still was not all the issue, but certain parts of it. I had different reactions for different parts of the book. So I feel like in many ways, this is kind of like a nice issue that wraps up a couple of things that weren't necessarily big plots, but we touch on it and we hopefully go from here, One of them, which I didn't even think about, because it's not like we really started from the ongoing Legion of Superheroes title prior to the Baxter run, is this confrontation between Shrinking Violet and Yira. Mm-hmm. When that came out, I was like, okay, yeah, oh, right, yeah, we should have that. Another one is finally addressing, somebody on the damn team is addressing the death of Karate Kid.
Yes.
So I'm trying to stick to just bigger thoughts here before we get, specific. So in some regards, I like the issue for that. I like the issue that the biggest one, it brings home the 5 lost Legionnaires, finally, which we've been whining about. Not you and I, but the characters, the characters have been talking about for more than just the Baxter issues, even in the Tales book too.
I think I was whining about it too.
Okay. So it's a nice bookend for that. We get some closure, we get some opening, we get some continuation. And my biggest takeaway, and you can let me know if you want me to hold this until you get your thoughts out, but I wrote down here, of all the Legion Baxter issues, this one most exemplifies the craft of filmmaker Robert Altman, as quoted by Paul Levitz in the letter column from last episode, issue 8.
Ah, okay.
In the sense of ordered chaos. And I have more notes to that, but why don't you let me know what you think, and then we'll touch more on some of that.
Well, maybe I should have went first. That's a good observation, Peter. Well, I agree with everything you said. I'll just add, it's so nice to have the team back together. I love that one page where, and I'll talk about this in detail later, but where they're just hanging out.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in that one page.
So good.
I just absolutely love it. And I really dug the whole Element Lad and Jvan relationship. The way, because now we're getting into territory on the Baxter run where I'm really unfamiliar or just totally ignorant. And what I remember of their relationship before the Baxter run started was them, her flirting with Element Lad and he's kind of flirting back and stuff. But here they're really taking advantage of the direct market aspect of this book and pushing the boundaries for that time period, I would say, showing a little skin. The way Jvan is aggressive towards Element Lad, and he returns those feelings. And they talked I think in the previous issue or maybe the previous two issues, he says something to her about or maybe it's this one. I'm getting all my issues confused now, but needing to talk to her. They need to sit down and have a serious conversation about their relationship, ostensibly. So,
yeah, I have that in my notes. That's is it from a Tales issue?
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
No, I think it has, well, keep going. I have it somewhere in here.
Okay. But yeah, no, it's just, I really like that they're developing those romantic relationships a little more than they have been afforded in the past. And I'm curious if they're going to do that with other couples in the Legion, like Mon-El and Shadowlass and Phantom Girl and Ultra Boy and hell, even Colossal Boy and Yura. So I'd be really, I think, surprised to see that they actually do that. But I'm really hoping they do, and to what degree they do. I'm looking forward to discovering that.
It was from issue 3.
Okay.
Element Lad says, when I come back, we're going to have a long overdue talk.
Mm-hmm.
And he kisses her. I want to say issue 3 was possibly the first time they had a kiss, whereas this issue was, I think, the first time the kiss was really sort of mutual and passionate and important.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So that's maybe not consciously I was reacting to that, but I was certainly subconsciously reacting to that, at least based on what I recall, these issues that I read 30-some years ago.
Right. And I think as you were going through the synopsis earlier and you're going through all the little plots and subplots, and the thing that I struggled with in this issue was once they got to the sequence where they're in Hong Kong and we kind of got out of the scene by scene by scene thing and just got into this here's this little basic common superhero adventure, quote unquote. And I was sitting there going, who cares? I was like, all right, so a bunch of Legionnaires have to go to Hong Kong because they got a report that the Sklarians who are natural thieves are trying to get something. They have to figure out what it is. We find out that they're getting organs and they're going to take them back, I guess, to their home world. And then everything gets wrapped up and you're like, what? What? I was trying to figure out, was Paul Levitz trying to say something with that sequence? Was it about the Sklarians? Was it about, you know what I mean? Like my brain was trying to process, what the F is this sequence about? I don't get it.
Right.
Was that your reaction to that?
Exactly. Part? Yeah. So I'm looking at this going, okay, this has got to go somewhere besides just some sort of thing they have to attend to. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe not. Maybe it's just an excuse to have some action. That's why I made the comment. Maybe it's just some excuse to have some action in an issue that is demonstrably about relationships.
I agree with that. Yeah. So then the only note that I could write about that sequence, because of all the little through lines in this issue, it's the romance between Element Lad and Siobhan that gets the most stage time. They get
Mm-hmm.
3 different scenes. So I thought, okay, is that supposed to say something? Because Jan, before he goes off to that adventure, is kind of stammering over his words. He tells Siobhan he has something he wants to tell her. He wants to tell her his secrets. She's being far more aggressive than he is. This is the scene when they're actually in, I guess, her apartment or his apartment or whatever, probably her apartment. And then they get interrupted. But when he comes back, she's sleeping. He says, "I'm off duty." There are no words. They go right to, the physical. They go right to lovemaking. And I thought, was there something in the Hong Kong sequence that turned his trepidation or made him not be so hesitant? Was it the fact that he's team leader and he made the decision to go to this thing and the outcome of it? Because he picks, as you sort of alluded to, he picks not only people who were lost, but he picks, I feel like he's picking people that he doesn't know. So Invisible Kid 2 is sort of new. Lightning Lass is back. He calls her Light Lass the first time he sees her. Shrinking Violet, she's got a whole new personality. And Cam, I mean, he's a senior member, so that's not necessarily the case. But I thought, was it his way to say, let me pick the Legionnaires that I don't know and see what they do. And maybe at the end of it, he goes, you know what? This team is good. I'm the leader. I don't need to be going out here. I deserve to have a romance. But I don't find any evidence in that in the writing, really. That was just me sort of very high speculating.
That's really interesting because the way, I mean, I can totally see that. I mean, in some ways, I would totally agree with everything you said. But I'm looking at that page where it's on page 9, where I think they're at her place. Well, it doesn't say which place it is, but I assume it's her place. And she's coming on to him. Great, you can tell me all about it later. And she's pulling off his shirt. And Jan has this, I don't know, to me, the look on his face is, what's going on? He looks not concerned is the word that keeps coming to my brain, but that's not the right word. He's surprised maybe at her,
forwardness.
Yes, thank you. Forwardness, exactly. But then in the next panel, on the next page, he's now on top of her and they're talking and he's smiling. So I don't know. Maybe it's just a failing on Lytle's part in conveying the feelings that Jan's going through, or maybe this is purposeful and he's just a conflicted character in terms of this relationship. But I took him agreeing to go on this mission, because Dream Girl contacts him and he says, no, let me handle this since I'm back. And I thought, and you look at Siobhan's reaction there when he says that, she's really upset. And I almost took it like he's not comfortable in this situation, so he's going to take any chance to walk away from this right now. But
right.
then we get at the end of the issue where he comes back to her, apparently reciprocating those feelings that she has for him. And yeah, I reacted the same kind of way, I think, as you described. It was like, well, what happened between that scene and the following scene with them together that made him change his mind? And I couldn't find anything in the intervening pages.
Yeah, and again, this, like I said, I think it's just us high speculating.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if it's okay to jump the timeline a bit, as they say. I know when we get to the 5 years later Legion, there is not even the Siobhan thing, but just with Jan himself, he is much more reserved. he's almost faith-based when it comes to his people, right? He's a survivor of a planet. He almost becomes super contemplative. He's quiet. And I wonder if this is just the early stages of Paul Levitt saying, yeah, this is what our Element Lad is. He's the leader of the team, but he's a leader that is very nervous. He's a leader that is very unsure. So in a relationship, he would be that same way too. Mm-hmm. But yet something about that Hong Kong mission gives him confidence. I don't know. So I don't think we're not going to come up with an answer. I don't think there is one there, right? I think it's just us it's me wanting to make that Hong Kong sequence make sense, because otherwise I'm like, what is that supposed to be?
Yeah, it has to have some sort of importance. Otherwise, why would you include it?
Yeah.
And because Levitt's, in the letter columns and other things that I've read of him talking about his time on the Legion, it's always about moving the story, moving the story forward, moving it along. Mm-hmm. And, things have to build on each other. And that, he's so well known for his subplots. So you would think that any other part of the story, he would be as considerate. That's probably not the right word. As conscious of where he's going and why he's going, more importantly, as he is those subplots. Although even in the letter column from a future issue about this issue 9, people were complaining about the number of subplots, and I think you even mentioned something about all the number of interludes or subplots that were going on here in this issue. So I don't know. I just think that as you're writing this narrative, you gotta have things have some sort of meaning and not just have an excuse to have these characters show off their powers.
Right. Well, I have a few things that I got out of that sequence that might be me just pulling it out of my butt. But who knows? So one of them is I think it's the first time we get Shrinking Violet and Lightning Lass, the new Shrinking Violet, the new Lightning Lass, on a mission together.
That's true. Good point.
Not that they necessarily have interacted, but I did take away that notion, especially because both of them are so headstrong in that sequence. Lightning Lass, when she fires her bolts, she is firing her bolts. I think even that one point where she takes Element Lad by surprise, how ferocious she can be. And of course, Shrinking Violet throughout the whole book has been a little on edge. So her meeting with Yera earlier on, which I'm sure we'll talk about, I can see that playing into how aggressive she is in the Hong Kong mission. So that was one small element I thought, oh, maybe it has to do with that. Maybe that's Paul Levitt subconsciously saying, let me put these two characters in close proximity because we're about to get even closer.
I think you're giving him far too much credit, but it sounds good. I like that theory.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of these, like I said, some of these have no basis in. There's no evidence. It's just me, plucking away. The other one, I did a little deep dive into the old Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes title. So one of the things that's kind of cool that I did it before with the controllers, and I may do it in the future too. So I looked up the Sklarians, the Raiders, the female matriarchal society, the Sklarians. Because right away when I saw the name, I went, oh, right. The Sklarians, that's what Kono from the 5 years later Legion, that's the race that she belongs to. And if you don't know if you haven't read 5 Years Later, then listeners aren't going to understand it. But Kono was a companion of Ultra Boy. She was that young, yellow-skinned girl that was hanging around with him. She's a Sklarian. So I was like, oh, right. Okay, yeah. So I know the race. So then I was like, okay, well, when did they first appear? Well, they first appeared in Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes 233, cover date November of 1977. It was their first appearance, written by Paul Levitz, artists James Sherman and Bob Wyacek. Ben Oda was letterer, and Liz Berube was the colorist. So, and they weren't the main antagonists in that story. That issue was the first time we saw the Infinite Man.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, so it did have Ron Vidar in it, which was kind of interesting because Ron is in this issue. So I thought that was... So the first time we saw the Sklarians back in 1977, they were pink-skinned. So I assume either between then and now, or maybe in this issue, they decided to give them a different skin tone. They're an all-female race of space pirates who attack various science outposts to gain technology for their planet. So they're still doing, in this issue, what they've been doing all along. What else? In that issue, while they're battling the Sklarians, Lightning Lad uses his powers to create a ring of lightning around them to entrap them. And Lightning Lass in this issue does the same thing. She puts that ring of lightning around the group of them on page 22. So I don't know if that was Steve Lytle doing his research or that's just dumb luck, coincidence, whatever. I thought that was cool. The only other thing I took from that, well, there was some stuff I took from it in terms of Infinite Man and what his origin, but there's an Infinite Man story coming up in about 10 issues from now, so we'll both have to read that issue again so we can connect. But in that issue, Wildfire is leader, and he goofs on Dream Girl's powers. And he says, because Dreamy says to Starboy, I foresaw the Sklarian attack just after you left, but I couldn't prophesize the result. And then Wildfire says, as usual, Dream Girl's ability left something to be desired, accuracy. And I was like, oh, that's harsh. No wonder the two of them have such bad blood between them. He's been a jerk to her all the time. So that I'm sure that's not something Paul Levitz decided to keep. But I just thought it was interesting that he was a jerk to her back then. And it's interesting that they constantly kind of nick at each other, you know? You know, I could see Paul Levitz going, oh, let me use the Sklarians. I haven't used them in a while. I'm the one who came up with them. So that it was interesting. It's nothing that really connects deeply, but I thought it was a nice little, tangent that I could go, let me read it and see what happens and see what I get out of it. And that's what I got out of it.
Well, you gotta bring something to this issue.
Yeah.
Can we go to the group stuff?
Sure.
So, the first page, the first splash page here, you get the team just sitting around their big ass table, which I don't know if we've ever seen this particular table before, but
we saw in Tales number 318. It also opens on a splash page of them at the table, but that table had the giant gold L in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And a chandelier that looked like it had like melted gold on it or whatever. But it's the same. When I opened the page, I almost had a sense of deja vu. And I was like, whoa. Because it's almost the same characters from that Tales book, except we're missing Brainiac and Dawny.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, we have Lightning Lass. But it's almost the same ones because that's how long this whole thing of the missing Legionnaires have been.
Yeah.
And we have Dream Girl up there. The only one that's in the same space, by the way, is Starboy. He's at the left hand of Dream Girl in both of those splash pages. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I imagine Starboy, given that Dream Girl is acting leader, arrives at these meetings early so he can get that seat.
That's good. Yeah.
But no, I just love the. Really, what I like here is not the shot itself. There's some great conversation here to kind of set up things, but I love what Lytle's done. Lightning Lass is kind of everyone's kind of sitting kind of straight on at their little desk areas in the chairs, except Lightning Lass is turned away slightly and actually facing Dream Girl with her arms behind her head, so she looks kind of relaxed, but she's also turned away from Timberwolf, who is almost directly opposite her, which I thought was a nice touch. And
I didn't even catch that because he is looking at her, isn't he?
Yeah. And I mentioned in the synopsis he kind of is not stalking her. Maybe, I don't know.
He's mopey.
Yeah, he's very mopey. You're right. And Wildfire sitting next to him, like you said, he kind of makes barbs at Dream Girl, and I think we've talked about it in previous issues as well. But he's sitting there, while he's talking, he's also just kind of playing around with his powers, just sitting there. And I thought, well, that's kind of rude. So that to me, that's that adds to the whole contentious relationship that they seem to have with each other. Mm-hmm. Drake just seems to have no respect for Dream Girl for some reason.
Yeah.
And then a couple pages later, the Lost Legionnaires just show up out of nowhere, and I love that middle panel made up of just tiny little panels itself of all the facial reactions of all the present Legionnaires. It's just a wonderful little thing. Some of them confuse me though. I don't understand a few of them. Block is really exuberantly excited about the fact that they're back. Lightning Lass, her head's kind of shaken and she's like, oh, and that was a very weird one to me. Why she's reacting that way. And, and I know part of it is just, well, they have, what is this? There's 4, 7, 12 or 13 of these reactions, right? So they all got to be a little different. And, right. I'm sure Levitz came in and added some dialogue after the fact. So, just kind of given the space and what Lytle did with the heads in these panels, I get that, but it's just in character, in world, it just, that seems like a really weird reaction considering that I think, didn't she feel guilt about leaving them behind, that she was able to get back and they were still lost? I thought she had said or expressed some sort of guilty feelings about, being the quote unquote survivor of that situation.
Yeah.
And yet she's very underwhelmed. Her reaction is very underwhelmed.
Maybe she's choked up.
Yeah. And I kind of thought that too, in the way that her head is supposedly kind of moving, shaking or whatever, and the look on her face. But I don't know. It's hard to glean from this shot what exactly is going through her head, and maybe that's the point too. I don't know.
Yeah, because all of that you have to imagine all of those reactions are happening at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love the very George Perez-esque approach to those panels because they are in the exact order that they're seated in the table.
Oh, I did not even notice that.
So if you look at the top shot, I mean, Dream Girl's the leader, but from that side of the table, it goes White Witch to Sun Boy, and then the bottom one is Star Boy to Cosmic Boy, and they're in the same order.
Yeah, nice catch.
Yeah. I do, and I also like the last panel on page 3, because Shadowlass and Phantom Girl are hugging, which totally makes sense because they're almost best friends.
Mm-hmm.
Colossal Boy and Chameleon Boy, they're friends. You have the leader and the new person, Lightning Lass. There's storytelling stuff in there, subtle, that if you know Legion history, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciated that. This is a beautifully drawn book, this issue. I mean, we raved about his artwork last issue, and I think he just totally upped his game this issue.
Well, yeah, and funny you mention that because the letter column, a couple of the letter columns about this issue really compliment Lydell's art and how it's progressed and how good it really is based on what's going on in this issue. So yeah, I totally agree.
And then probably the other takeaway for these 3 pages is, once again, Cosmic Boy almost stepping up and pulling rank and saying, all right, we have to have new members. And this time around, Starboy agrees as opposed to not agree. And that's the thing that makes Dream Girl kind of twist and say, okay, then we got to take care of this. We need new members. And then gets Wildfire to organize it.
But he seems very eager to do so.
Yeah, he's like the Kilowog of the group.
That's right. Yes, yeah, and he's done this before too, right? In previous issues, he's either organized, or am I thinking of him coming into the Legion Academy and giving them some pointers? I can't remember which one.
I think it was my first Legion issue, Legion 304, where I'm pretty sure he's fighting some of the Academy members.
Oh, it wasn't that the Spotlight issue on him?
No, that was trying to think. It mostly focused on the Academy issue. It had the cover with the Academy members on the cover running towards us. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then at the end, I think that's when Dawnstar goes off and he gets mad and blows himself up.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to get new members. And we see one of the new members in this issue, which I didn't know. I totally didn't know until my second or third reread of it. I was like, oh my God, I'm so used to seeing certain members in the book that I stopped and went, wait, that's this character's first appearance. Did you catch it?
I think I know where you're going, but I did not catch it, no.
If we jump real quick to page 11. This is the one where it's one page, but it has 2 different sequences. We get the RJ brand once again. Not once again. Yeah, and you probably see it now.
I see it now, yeah.
Yeah. So we get RJ Brand meeting some Proteans. So that it was last issue, as you referenced in the synopsis, that there was, kind of like a protest about getting sentient rights for the Proteans. So clearly this is a subtitle that I have absolutely no idea where it goes. I do not remember this subplot at all. Not subtitle, subplot. I don't remember it at all. I don't know where it goes. Somebody is watching him. I want to say that the bald guy watching him is Charon, who was an assassin for Leland Macaulay, but I don't know. And that's really all we get. We get 3 panels of that. He's having a meeting. We'll see where that goes. But then the one down below is a continuation of people getting hurt or killed that are descendants of the Justice League. And we get the character of Dran, who is a character that has appeared before. And he appeared in Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes 207, The Rookie Who Betrayed the Legion. And he's kind of like a bumbling science police detective. This is the first time I remember, or reading it this time, I was like, oh, right, this character, but I don't remember him. And I forget how he plays out in this sequence, but we'll find out eventually. But then as they're all standing around Laurel Kent at Legion Academy, and there's Magnetic Lad, and there's Power Boy and Bouncing Boy, right there is Tellus.
Mm-hmm.
I totally just blew right by it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And then I went, wait a minute, what's he doing there? That's his first appearance. That's, it's not really spoilers, but that's one of the new characters that will be a Legionnaire in about 4 or 5 issues.
Yeah, I think I just, because I know Tellus. I know he joins the Legion eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just kind of, my brain is like looking at this panel going, oh yeah, there's Tellus. And I move on. It's like, but he's not, he totally wasn't he hadn't appeared before now. And very strange. Good catch.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to go for a different Legionnaire just based on the next page. There's a panel where these little robots are they're putting out a fire. And it's vaguely reminiscent of Quizlet.
Oh.
I thought, well, that's not really quick. Can it be? No.
Oh, we'll get to Quizlet. Yeah. But I thought that was great. I didn't catch it. I thought it was great. And I don't know whose that is. Was that Paul Levitz going, yeah, let's throw that character in? Was that Steve Lytle? Because I know I read the letter, I think you did too. You read the letters about this issue from like a future book, right? I think it was like issue 14 or whatever. And in it, one of the things that I think it's Paul Levitz that he responds and he says, oh yeah, Steve Lytle came in with a portfolio of some new ideas for the Legion that we incorporated in those later issues. So I half wonder if he designed Tellus. And Paul was like, you know what, why don't you throw one of those characters in? Let's just throw them in. Nobody's going to know.
Yeah, in fact, in the Legion Companion, there's an interview with Steve Lytle, and he talks about that. He says here, I know that I was really pushing that we should have non-humanoid Legionnaires.
Mm-hmm.
And so he talks about how Pat Broderick and Giffen came up with some, alien-looking things, but nothing really in relation to the Legion itself. And so, yeah, I think you're right about that in regards to Tellus, and then some other ones that we get later.
That was something that people who wrote in, they were saying that for a while too. They were like, we need some aliens on there, like real, not just white witch because she's got white. Well, she's not even technically originally white, but like Shadowlast, she's humanoid. She just happens to have blue skin.
Mm-hmm.
I think the closest we get is Block, and you could say Comic Queen is because she's an alien that is still humanoid, but she's got some other funky things going on. But she's not a Legion member. She's So, yeah, that was really cool to see in this issue. That made me like this issue a little bit more. It's like, first appearance of Tellus. Yay. Do you want to hit that landscape page that we mentioned? Might as well, right?
Oh, my gosh.
That is the best thing in the book.
It is. It totally is. There's so much going on here. I can't believe that Steve Lytle packed in all this stuff. Even though it's landscaped, I mean, there's just, and it's different levels. Two or three different levels. Well, I guess really, it is. It's about 3 different levels of things going on, spatially, and just the little quick conversations between everybody and how they're dressed. And I think somebody in the letter column also talked about how cool it was to see everybody casually dressed, and that was really cool to me too. Because it's one of those conceits in superhero comics that characters they don't change their costume for the most part. Legion actually is probably one of the major exceptions to that over the years, but some characters don't change at all. And just seeing, their fashion choices, the 30th century fashion from a 1980s viewpoint is always kind of fun. I
like the subtle hints of their costumes.
Yeah. I was going to mention that too.
Yeah.
They can't seem to get away from their trademarked brand.
Right. I mean, how funny is Ultra Boy? He's in that sleeveless sweater, this almost like a sweater vest almost. But he's got the Ultra Boy symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Cosmic Boy has those little ringlets, those circlets, whatever, at his shoulders. So that's reminiscent of his costume. Element Lad, who, by the way, Siobhan has her hand on his ass.
Yeah.
That's great. But he's in that blue and green, which is kind of similar to the colors of one of his earliest costumes.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the other things that stood out?
Well, so I'm just going to go around the page here. So you mentioned Ultra Boy. Of course, he's sitting with Phantom Girl. They're both with Mon-El and Shadow Lass. That couple, those two power couples, hanging out all the time,
mm-hmm.
and which is just one of those neat recurring things that you see in this run of the Legion, which I just really dig that. The next group of people you mentioned, Jan and Siobhan. See, that's where I thought Gigi was standing in between.
You're right.
Cam and Jan there.
Right, because they're referencing that backup tale.
Yes.
In Tales, just like Mon-El is they're basically referencing. They're basically saying to the readers, "Oh, by the way, go read the Tales book because we had other adventures."
I know. If they had just a bit more room, they could have had an editor's box explaining, "Go read this issue. Go read that issue."
Right.
But it's nice that they don't feel the need to do that. And then you got Shrinking Violet standing. So she's standing on this elevated chair, which I thought was odd that she's standing there. But she's looking at Yura and being really aggressive in a way. Saying, "How cozy! We must invite anyone to our parties these days." And I just, I know why she's reacting that way, but it's just like, wow, why don't you just go up and slap Yura if you? And then you got this is one of the weird ones to me. You got Sunboy sitting there across from Ron. Starboy's behind him, and Sunboy turns to him and says, "Hey, I think it's impossible for Ron to perfect a solar-powered time search beam." And I thought, Sunboy, really?
I guess because Brainiac 5 isn't there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you've got the bumbling duo of Wildfire and Invisible Kid. I love that. They're just kind of hanging out there. They're just reacting to what the faulty computo, as we keep seeing. He's not quite perfected yet, overfilling, I should say, Invisible Kid's drink. But considering a previous, I think it was a Tales issue, mm-hmm. where Invisible Kid basically drags Wildfire out of this other dimension where he's supposedly happy back to the real world, and yet here's Wildfire hanging out with his guy. And then you've got Chief Zendak here having a heated discussion or Lightning Lass having a heated discussion with Chief Zendak, with Dream Girl in a gold outfit instead of her usual white or platinum or whatever you want, however you want to think of that. Just kind of standing there, sort of paying attention, but her back is to them. So that's a weird thing. What did you think of that? What Lightning Lass is saying to Chief Zendak there? I don't think that's fair, Chief. No one asked Vaughn to go, Lightning Lass.
Is it referencing the scene where she goes after his nephew?
That's what I thought, but why would Lightning Lass care?
Maybe because they knew that there was a party, or I don't know.
Yeah, because this is later. It just seems like a weird thing, and I thought, well, maybe it's not that, maybe it's something else, but I can't figure out what it is.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just an odd little scene, and then finally you've got Block and White Witch, and Block, the poor guy, You know, all he wants is to be near White Witch, and he comes over to talk to her. You know, doing the brave thing and or not the wallflower thing, and actually talking to her, and she's like, she could just care less. Please move aside from the midst of the illusion. It's rather unaesthetic. And that's the other thing is, so all around this page is this wonderful magical scenery, kind of holographic like type stuff that's just everywhere with this aquarium theme or water park theme or something. I'm not quite sure what she's going for, but it's wonderful to see Lytle just letting loose on the page like this and just throwing everything on there, and it's still having narrative flow going through, and it's like you're standing there listening to all these conversations in this large get together. It is a wonderful, wonderful page.
Yeah, Timberwolf looking over at Lightning Lass.
I forgot to mention that one. Yeah, exactly. I mean, boy, he's not being subtle about it either.
No,
that's where I think I got kind of like that stalker vibe from him. It's like, dude, you need to chill.
The only thing I'll add to it is that conversation with Rond and Sunboy and Starboy about a time search beam may have something to do with the Infinite Man, and may have something to do with the next time we see him.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah. Well, that would make total sense then. Yeah.
Which, again, if that's Paul Levitt's doing that on purpose, that's not going to happen for another, 9 to 10 issues. So that's going to be a callback there. So this page is perfect to go into the whole Robert Altman thing.
Okay.
So I just took this from the Robert Altman wiki page. I don't mind using wiki. Some people are like, wiki, whatever. I don't care. Because I think it really speaks to this page and to the issue as a whole. So Robert Altman, director, writer, producer, he directed MASH, he directed Nashville, Popeye, Shortcuts. And there's this 3 paragraphs from the wiki that really, when I was reading it, I thought, oh my God, this is this issue. And again, the only reason I'm bringing up Robert Altman is because Paul Levitz brought up Robert Altman in the letter column for issue 8. So in the wiki, it says Robert Altman made it clear that he did not like storytelling in his films, contrary to the way most television and mainstream movies are made. According to Altman, biographer Mitchell Zuckoff wrote, he disliked the word story, believing that a plot should be secondary to an exploration of pure, or even better, impure human behavior. Zuckoff describes the purposes underlying many of Altman's films. He loved the chaotic nature of real life with conflicting perspectives, surprising twists, unexplained actions, and ambiguous endings. He especially loved many voices, sometimes arguing, sometimes agreeing, ideally overlapping, a cocktail party or a street scene captured as he experienced it. Film author Charles Derry wrote that Altman's films characteristically contain perceptive observations, telling exchanges, and moments of crystal clear revelation of human folly. Because Altman was an astute observer of society and especially interested in people, many of his film characters had that sloppy imperfection associated with human beings as they are, with life as it is lived. As a result, his films are often an indirect critique of American society. So, that's what this issue is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about what they said about a cocktail party, a street scene, characters who have conflicting perspectives that are about arguing, about the little moments adding up to a larger feeling. And I thought, yeah, that's what this is. That's exactly what this book is.
Yeah.
Nothing is resolved. Some things are, but then new things aren't. It's about the interaction. It's about character traits. It's about Legionnaires. It's about their powers. It's about their personality. And then as I was looking for me, like going from transition to transition, I thought, wow, we're used to reading these books and having all these little scenes pop up. But in this one, they kind of flow naturally. If you go from like the sequence that you were talking about with Shrinking Violet. So she talks to Yira on page 7. When we turn the page, she bumps into Timberwolf, which brings us into Timberwolf and Block and Timberwolf's quest, right? And then later on, like when you go to Hong Kong and we start to see the adventure between the people that Element Lad took, well, who else is flying through Hong Kong but Timberwolf on his way to Tokyo to go do whatever it is that he's going to do with Karate Kid's will. So I thought, this issue, at least in terms of the writing craft, while it may not bowl me over in terms of a large, important aspect of the Legion, damn, if Paul Levitz and Steve Lido and company, if they're not, this is like a song from beginning to end. The way it really just kind of goes from one thing to the next. And then reading that whole thing about Robert Altman, I was like, Paul Levitz must have been a major devotee of him.
Yeah, and it's really fun to see how, well, not fun. It's just seeing the subtle transitions that you just mentioned. We're not hit over the head with them. As you say, it flowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, and I really like that. It wasn't like, here's this jarring transition or hitting us over the head with this transition. It's just there you go. Here it is.
Now, as I said, the question though is it interesting to read? Which I think you and I both agree that the smaller stuff is pretty interesting. And then that main quote unquote scene, if it really is the main thing, or if it's just a continuation of, Element Lad or whatever, that's the one that kind of left me scratching my head. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's something to be said for, because we are really diving deep into these issues. And so sometimes I wonder, when I got to this issue, I started wondering, well, maybe because we're so used to looking at these in the way that we are, that if once we come across an issue that is just kind of a day in the life of sort of story, mm-hmm. that has no real impact to the overall narrative that's been building up, maybe we're not giving it its due because it's not something big, or at least recognizing it as building up to something big, and expressing some dissatisfaction with that. Right. And so, I think we need to be open to just these, like they say, the day in life or slice of life type stories that don't really go anywhere or do anything much, but do contribute to the overall character development at the very least of the Legion itself.
And the tone of the book that Paul Levitz wants to write, right? Like I'm sure he could do a straightforward action book if he wanted to, and that's not something that interested him, even though he kept getting emails, even though he kept getting letters saying, stop with the short, quick scenes. There were people who didn't like it as we read the letter columns, mm-hmm. But that's his way of going, look, I got to write it like this. I have to write it like this because it's got to be interesting to me. And if it's not interesting to him, I mean, he's the sole writer of this book for a long time. So,
mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you got to think you're going to get bored unless you play around with things. And I've read so many interviews over the years with artists and writers of these comics, and they'll like you connected with the Robert Altman stuff. They'll see another artist at work and go, "Ooh, I want to play in that sandbox on my thing."
Right.
And, more power to him. Let's experiment some more. Let's break out of the mold of here's a hero, here's a villain. They fight. Things are, resolved.
Yeah.
Especially this long-term narrative and so many characters that Levitz has to juggle at any one time. Yeah, I don't blame him for playing around with things.
In many ways, this was the largest ensemble of characters probably in any book, Marvel or DC. I know some people will say, well, what about the X-Men?
Mm-hmm.
This is a lot more than now, maybe if you're talking Jim Lee, Chris Claremont era, when it became just adjectiveless X-Men, and each book had 9 to 10 people in it, 14 people in the first X-Men, there. But I mean, when I was reading the John Romita, Chris Claremont stuff, there was the core X-Men and a lot of supporting characters,
mm-hmm.
but it wasn't a cast of 20. It wasn't a cast of 20 X-Men. So, yeah, I mean, this is the book he wants to tell. This is the book so I think it's still I'm still perplexed by that sequence, but I finished this book and thought that was cool. I don't want every issue to be like that.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. It's just, I mentioned the day in the life. I mean, we got that in the Titans, famously for issue 8, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the New Teen Titans. And, we've had other stories like that, but man, yeah, you don't want those every month or even, very soon after you do it the one time. So yeah, this was a nice, a nice interlude to what we have had previous to this in the way that the story is structured and presented. So I guess we can expect something big coming next, right?
Or at least maybe with purpose.
Yeah. Moving towards something, yeah.
Yeah, what's the next issue say? Something about it's time for a new president of Earth. Will the Khunds cast the decisive vote? So, I mean, that feels like, okay, that's a little bit more narrative. Something's going to happen. That's a plot that's been going on for a while. So we're going to start wrapping up some of these things, hopefully. Do you have other points to point out? I have some stuff. If you have stuff, we can just batter back and forth.
Just a couple things. We talked about the Protean thing a little bit. I have an excerpt from the Legion Companion about that regarding Steve Lytle's involvement.
Oh, great.
Let's see here. So he's talking about how he was encouraged to suggest dialogue bits, and in some cases, Steve Lytle would add entire scenes. I would just give Paul the courtesy of a phone call, and I would call and say, "Do you mind if I do this?" And he'd either say yes or no. I can't remember an instance where he said no, but I always thought he had the option of saying no. He'd say, "Oh yeah, go ahead, do a scene where the Proteus are trying to get their independence and their sentient status. Go ahead and do a scene like that in this issue. Take half a page here if you can fit it in or whatever."
And he did.
Yeah.
So there again, to your point, it doesn't have to be something huge. It's a narrative thing to just drive home that this is the 30th century and this is the kind of stuff that's going on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And something that Steve Lytle just wanted to do. That's funny.
Mm-hmm. And then the last thing I have here, again, complimenting the art. And I've talked about this in I think the previous couple issues, but how Lytle is depicting the characters' powers. And I really glommed onto how Invisible Kid is shown. So I mentioned towards the top of this episode about Phantom Girl and how she's been depicted over the years. And I see that in terms of Invisible Kid as well. He's shown a couple times in this issue where basically it's just some black outlines and you see his head as he's fading out, I guess. And then other times you can sort of see through him as if he's a ghost with a bit of yellow highlighting to accentuate the fact that his costume is yellow. And I really and then when he's invisible, they do actually show him in he's outlined in white, to show that or to depict that he's actually invisible. So, just the different ways in which they're showing him and how he's using his powers. I just thought that was really cool. The way that Lytle is playing around with that.
And some of that speaks to what they can do with the Baxter paper, probably.
That's especially with the coloring, I would think. With just a hint of the yellow of his costume as he's fading out. Yeah.
Right.
What about you? What's on your list?
We talked about, so we have new members coming up. We did get a scene, as we mentioned, between Shrinking Violet and Yura. I took a little issue with Yura saying, "I regret having borrowed your identity." Well, I think it was a little more than that.
Yeah, downplaying a bit, I think.
Yeah. She says, "My role was an innocent dupe of your own people on Imsk." And, Shrinking Violet says to her, "I agree with that. And that's why I'm not going to beat you up. But don't ever do it again." So I wanted a little bit more because that whole subplot of her being impersonated is part of the issue that I first started reading the Legion with. So to me, that was something kind of big. And I think I mentioned before, I don't know Shrinking Violet prior to the version we get for the Baxter run.
Oh.
This is my Shrinking Violet, the very tough, new personality Shrinking Violet. So when I read this issue and I saw that sequence, I thought, oh, okay, this is the wrap-up of it. Okay, all right, I guess. And I did like that they kept Jim out of it to some degree, even though he was technically – he thought he had a romance with Shrinking Violet, but it really was, this Durlin in disguise who he then marries. So you would think, well, no, I guess Shrinking Violet wouldn't have anything to say to him because she didn't know that they were having a romance because she was wrapped up in a tube somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
So it was just an interesting little sequence.
Well, and I'll add to that just the dynamic between these two female characters. Vi is, very justified in the way that she is reacting to Yura, I think. But the way that Yura is depicted here, I just thought that was unusual, I guess, maybe for the situation or the time. I don't know which. But she's very, very confident in her position, her situation, that she's not letting Vi intimidate her.
Mm-hmm.
She agrees with Violet's assessment, so to speak, but she's also not, overly apologetic, not acquiescing to Vi to some large degree. I don't know. I just really found, for the first time, Yura a very fascinating character, and I say this a lot, but I hope we get a little bit more in the future in the way that she's being depicted here. I don't know how involved she is in what's coming up,
right?
But I would not be sad to see more of Yura.
Right. I mean, because they could have totally went the Lois Lane, Lana Lang route, and they didn't.
Yes, exactly. Right. Or that, I'm so sorry. I'm dirt for having been, duped into depicting you, all that kind of stuff. Which, to be fair, they maybe glossed over that a little too much, considering how much she, I don't know, like I say, duped not just Jim, but the Legion at large.
Right.
And yet she is accepted by, in large part by a lot of the Legionnaires. So, and I don't know that we got a whole lot. I can't remember a whole lot of scenes with her and other Legionnaires. And she just, here in this issue, she's just kind of there and everyone's okay with it. Well, except for Vi, of course.
Right. On page 9 and 10, the scene between Siobhan and Element Lad, Jan says, "We were all depressed from Karate Kid's death. And I thought, really?
Mm-hmm.
Were they really, Mr. Levitz? Really?
Yeah.
Because I don't remember them being really depressed. I don't remember anybody mentioning it.
That's a little bit too much show and not tell.
Yeah. I guess that's okay. Let's see. And then Timberwolf and Zerf, as you mentioned in the wrap-up, in the synopsis about, although they don't mention that they're doing, that he's the executor of Karate Kid's will. They don't actually mention Karate Kid, but obviously that's what it is.
Right, you're right.
Because, that was who's been the most recent death. So, of course, that's what it is. I thought it was a little weird as I was getting to that sequence. I thought, wait a minute. Has this come up before? Did he get like a message or something to meet some lawyer? And I was like, no, this is it. This is the first time we're hearing of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a little strange. And I wrote why Timberwolf, what's going on. But this is all stuff that's going to come out in a couple issues. So this is just the first time we're coming up against this. There's a couple of nice things with Chameleon Boy when he's impersonating the Sclarians. He talks about, okay, now how did this Sclarian walk? And another time he says, all right, I have to, let me raise my voice pitch a little bit. So not only is it just about impersonating physically, but actually, the physicality of them too, which I thought that was nice, because that's not something you can draw, but you can at least mention. And on page 12, Chameleon Boy turns into a whoopee cushion.
Yes, he does.
Yes, he does. And that's it. That's all I had.
All right.
So do you feel a little better about the issue after?
Oh yeah.
I don't think you said you hated it.
No. It's just, this issue is probably not the best example of the sum of its parts. The parts are really good, but overall it's just kind of okay. I read an issue.
Here's an interesting thing. Would you give this issue to someone who's never read the Legion before?
Oh God, no.
No?
No. Well, no, I wouldn't. I think I know where you're going with this, but and I agree with you to some degree, but I don't know. That's asking a lot for someone to parse all this.
I just thought maybe because it's not like it's not a part of a 3-part story,
Mm-hmm.
There's some stuff in here that you have to be familiar with in terms of, I mean, look, I say that, what was my first issue of Legion? a focus on the Legion Academy. It wasn't even the Legion. It was the Legion Academy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting. And then one thing from the letter column of this issue is that they're teasing the Legion of Substitute Heroes special that is coming out in the spring of 1985.
Yes, that infamous special.
Oh, I love that special.
Maybe we should do.
When was the last time you read it?
Oh, it's been a couple decades.
Oh, you're gonna love it now.
I was gonna say, are we gonna talk about that one?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I have that in my notes of we'll see if we'll either put it at the end of an episode like we've been doing, or if we want to do anything different. But it's definitely in my notes. I think we need to talk about it.
All right.
Especially because of Polar Boy, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. From what I remember of that special, to go from that to where Polar Boy ends up,
yeah,
that'd be a nice contrast. Yeah.
By the way, comparing the Baxter issue number 9 to the reprint in the Tales book, they flipped that landscape panel, which, if you think about it, kind of makes sense. Like, if you're doing a landscape book, the bottom of the landscape should go into the staples. I think. I'm trying to think of like, the Fantastic Four issue that Byrne did that was landscape, or the Cerebish issue, or the X-Force issue. I'm pretty sure the bottom of the image went into, on that side of the page that it's in the Baxter book, went to the staple, whereas in the Baxter book, it's going out to the open edge. Mm-hmm. So in the Tales book, for some reason, they flipped it.
Which do you think is the better presentation?
I think the Tales is the one that is the one that's more traditional. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying I think it's traditional to be the way that it is in the Tales book, not in the Baxter. But I could be wrong. I'd have to go look at that Fantastic Four, because that's not how you would read. They would all have to be the same way. Like if you put the Baxter book horizontally from the cover, and then you go, okay, let me read the first page. The top of the image would be at the what's that called? The crease, and the bottom of the image would be at the open edge. But then when you when you flip it and there's two, again, you don't want to keep flipping the book back and forth, right? So when we get to the image in this book, now we have to like flip the book to read it. And I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I think the Tales, that their decision in the Tales to reverse it was the correct one.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't know, maybe it was would someone who's used to reading manga maybe have a different viewpoint on that? I don't know. I mean, it's just a one-off. It's just one page, so it doesn't really matter. But if it was a continuous page, it would be wrong. So I just thought that was interesting that they did that. I think there was a run on the Superman Batman series from a year or two or three ago where they did an entire storyline. All the issues were landscaped. And I remember, I'm pretty sure they did it just like they did in the Tales, where the top of the page is on the outer edge, and the bottom of it's towards the staples. I will say, after 3 issues of that, I was done with them doing landscape pages because I didn't like reading the comic that way. We're all slaves to our oh gosh, what am I trying to say? We're slaves to our usual patterns. Yeah.
I mean, it is used to great effect certain times. Like I can remember the end of the Sinestro Corps War Special, and you flip the page, and it was not only was it landscape, it was a splash page, but landscape style. And it was like, oh my God. I don't want to say it in case somebody hasn't read it, but that was a huge thing. And we saw that artwork. I think Pants had that artwork, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? It's crazy. I think he has it. I'm pretty sure he does. Anyway, all right. So that's the wrap up of the book. So, issue number 9. I think we're both going, as we keep saying, we're in uncharted territory. I've read some of these issues, not all of them coming up, but I don't remember them at all. So it's gonna be good. This was the first one that I felt really surprised with.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, shall we go to the letter that we got?
Yeah, and what a letter too.
Yeah.
That was so cool to get that in my inbox and read that.
Yeah. So this is an email from Charlie LaGreca. People may know his name. He was one of the co-hosts of the very popular Indie Spinner Rack, one of the original comic book podcasts that started in 2005. I believe it started like in October of 2005. So it was Charlito and Mr. Phil, and they were one of the first major podcasts to look at indie comics and just people that I got to know personally and met them a couple times, broke bread with them many times, just I mean, they are friends of mine, I just love those guys. And when he sent the email, it clicked in my brain. He was a big Legion fan as a kid, reading these in the 80s. And I remember him talking about it every now and then on the Indie Spinner Rack. So when he got the email, I was like, oh my God, of course. So it touched me on that level of just like, oh my God, that's so awesome that he took the time to listen. And then, as you said, wrote this really great email. So I'm going to paraphrase here and there. He said, don't read it all, just edit it down. So I'm just going to read a bunch of stuff and we'll comment as we see fit. So he says, hey, Eric boy and Peter lad. Finally got to listen to the Legion Project. After hearing the first episode, I decided the Baxter run, along with your show, was going to be my summer reading venture. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys do such a freaking deep dive into each issue as if it's a thesis or masterclass. It's a joy for an old Legion of Superheroes fan to listen to you both banter about your feelings, thoughts, insights, characters, hidden meaning, not so hidden meanings, completely made up hidden meanings. Peter. I love that he calls me out. You continue to astound and amaze us all with your fountain of incredible knowledge. The catch with Cosmic King meeting the Legion of Superheroes for the first time. Eric, the info about Levitz and Giffen and how that famous Legion of Superheroes poster broke Giffen's brain. My brain was blown. I also appreciate that you both don't always agree while being so dang decent to each other. First of all, can I just say, so he abbreviates Legion of Superheroes as the full thing, LOSH, which I know a lot of letter column people do too. I do LSH.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. Losh. So a couple of things he says. I think what is so great in this reimagining of the Legion is that it was at the crest. I love this thought here. It was at the crest of the wave building towards 1986 in comics. It was the bubbling cauldron of storytelling zeitgeist of the 80s, a recipe of deeper, resonant stories that carried weight and took the characters and their stories serious. It put them in a more truthful light and sense of danger. These issues gave more personal moments and the push, pull, and angst between characters. Meanwhile, in Tales, it still remained fun and lighthearted, giving an interesting dichotomy twixt the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to add to that, Peter, sometimes I wish we did examine those Tales issues in conjunction with the Baxter run at the same time. Because of that very reason, because they have such a different take, a different feel from each other, and yet it's also very familiar. It is a wonderful dichotomy.
Right. I always read those, like, preparing for this episode, I read issue 9, and then I read, Tales 322. And there's some things in that, I was like, okay, but I always feel like at the end of those, I'm not sure how much I could talk about them, other than what Charlito just said and what you just said. I think the larger connective, the stuff that I really like, it's kind of there, but he's right. It was meant to be fluffier, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
So Charlito continues, looking back at that time, you can see the serious, more dark movement slowly building throughout all publishing in both mainstream and indies. I also love the series started to tap into female empowerment and the rise of the strong woman protagonist hero. This was a big part of the 80s as well. Of course, there were still those sexist, outdated viewpoints, but it was great to see Ayla and Queen Projectra come into their own. The first story arc does have its problems. Eric, you nailed it with the way Karate Kid said goodbye to Projectra. What the H? But man, is it fun to dust off. And I love that Levitz ends it unclean and dangling. Any thoughts on that, or should I continue?
Oh, no, I agree with that. As much as I I think perhaps criticize that, there is a wonderful quality to leaving your readers hanging with something, especially something as emotionally resonant as the death of a loved one.
Charlie continues, being a cartoonist artist, I loved hearing your thoughts on the interiors and covers. So many great points, observations with the eyes, metaphors, imagery, mirroring, and reuse of imagery. It was sad that Giffen bailed on the series. His work was so fantastic. Anything he did on the Legion was great. Yes, we eventually get him back, but I think it definitely affected the initial tempo and writing of the series. Thankfully, they found a very skilled and hardworking artist in Lytle, whose love of the characters and series gave it depth and excitement. How could you not become a fan of his work?
Yep.
I think I'm finding that too. I think I short shrifted. Is that the word? Short shrift, right? Short shift, whatever. Steve Lytle. I kind of thought of him more as an interim artist between Giffen and LaRocque, and now come to realize, no, he was just as important.
Yeah. I would agree. I think I felt the same way looking back on it, and now, as you just said, as we examine this, it's like, wow, Lytle really was strong, and it's too bad we didn't get him for longer.
Charlito steps into our conversation about issue number 4 with Karate Kid's hand. He says it's the best out of the run for him, hands down. Har har. He recalls at the time, I thought the cover was communicating that Karate Kid was just hurt. It didn't spoil it at all, and partly because I thought maybe Ayla was going to be the one who was going to die. And I love this, Charlie thinking of it from an artist's point of view. He says, in regards to your discussion of the pose or the plausibility of the cover, while the pose seems impossible, there are many ways Giffen could have been looking to pull that off. It could have just been straight up designed for graphic impact or for a very specific moment. How many covers have amazing graphic elements but are definitely not plausible or realistic? Mm-hmm. And this is the one I really like. It could be a single snapshot captured in time. Who says it has to be after the fact when Karate Kid is dead? Karate Kid could be leaning against the wall. He could be stumbling. It can be part of that fight during or post the end result. It could even be a shot from when he was in prison being tortured. For me, that is the beauty of great storytelling. It's capturing moments, time, atmosphere, rather than pose 1, pose 2, pose 3. Mm-hmm. The other 4 covers in comparison, while all fun, are pretty standard comic book cover superhero fare.
Yeah, he definitely has a point there.
I love that. I love that just capturing a moment as opposed to, I think we get stuck in that, like he says, we get stuck like it's the image, and especially Marvel and DC, maybe not so much these days, but there was that time like in the late 1990s and the early 2000s where you'd pick up a cover and you'd look at it and go, don't I already have this? And because it's just like, it's a shot of Punisher by Tim Bradstreet, looking down an alleyway, the same friggin' poses for 10 issues in a row, and you're like, wait a minute. So, and then Charlie sent us a digital breakdown for Comics Reader 171 that has a Paul Levitz interview. It says 5 years prior, so I don't know if it's prior to what we're reading now. Eric and I didn't have a chance to read it, but we'll definitely read it and get back to it if it comes up, if there's stuff in it that we should bring up later. Talking about how Paul Levitz likes to collaborate with his artist and create work that is specific to the artist, and how rare it is that it works and how many times the process gets messed up and goes off course, sometimes due to publishing issues or other stuff. So that'll be interesting to read. Mm-hmm. And then he wraps up, thanks again for the incredible shows. Keep them coming and long live the Legion Project. Yay.
Yeah. That's so cool. Thank you. Thank you, Charlito.
Yeah. So I just wanted to give time to that because he took the time to, write that email. And anybody who writes emails, we definitely read them, and we definitely will try to read as much of it as we can, or if there's a specific point that Eric and I want to talk about. Charlie did talk about something else, but we're going to save that part of the email in case it comes up naturally in a story later. Might be a fun topic to cover later. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Especially, like as I said, from someone who's loved the Legion as long as he has, that he took the time to listen. That's awesome. That's awesome. We're never not going to do an episode that isn't close to 2 hours.
I was just looking at the recording time as you were talking. And I'm like, it's going to be about the same as last time.
Yeah.
Even though this was going into this, I was thinking, boy, we're maybe an hour on this issue. I should just stop trying to guess how long we're going to talk about these issues based on the content, because we just seem to find a lot of things to discuss about these wonderful Legion comics.
And if it was just one storyline, maybe we could actually, but it's not. There's 20 different scenes in the book. So got to talk about all of them. Maybe that's what we'll do. Next episode, we're just going to give one comment about every scene, and then we'll see how short the episode is. There's no way we could do that.
I doubt it.
I couldn't do that. I'm sure, we're, like you said, we're 9 episodes in. People are still listening. So, nobody's written us an email that says, you guys need to shut up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I haven't gotten an iTunes review that says, Legion Project, knock it off.
Yeah. And even if they did, I don't care.
No, yeah, of course.
I would just do it if Charlita was listening.
All right. Well, are we at our outro?
Yeah. You can reach me at peter@thedailyreels.com.
And you can reach me at longboxreview@gmail.com.
And as always,
long live the Legion Project Podcast. Dun, da, da, da.
All right. See you, Eric.
It's been great. Yeah, it's been great talking with you, Peter.
You too.